This video is very important. If you are planning a trip to the Philippines and you want to know how much it's going to cost you, I need your full attention. How much the Philippines is going to cost you will depend massively on how long you're there for, where you go, how you travel, and the things that you like to do. So I'm about to throw a lot of figures your way to help you figure out an accurate budget for your specific trip. So I hope you're ready. Before I start, none of these figures include international flights to or from the Philippines, as well as it doesn't include travel insurance and everything that you're going to be spending beforehand. All of these figures are just costs that you will spend once you're in the Philippines, within the Philippines, and traveling within the country. So I'm going to work in Filipino pesos and Great British pounds. For the bigger figures, I'm just going to give you the Great British pounds to make it easier, and you can use Google or a currency exchange app to convert the figures into your preferred currency. So let's start by having a look at my trip. I was in the Philippines for 55 days and I spent exactly £3,056.
But Christiane, that's a lot of money. I want to go to the Philippines, but I don't want to spend that much.
Let me break down for you this cost. In the Philippines, I travelled to around 12 main locations. My biggest expenses, which were optional, were the flights I took and the diving I did. Within the Philippines, I went on 5 flights to travel between islands. The cost of my flights combined was £376, which is around £75 per flight. All of these flights I only booked a day or two in advance, and I was always paying a little bit extra for them because my backpack was not small enough to fit in the carry-on. So if you are able to book your flights much further in advance and or you only have a carry-on backpack, then these flights should not be costing you more than maybe £30 to £40 for each flight. If I took 0 flights on my Philippines trip, it would have cost me £3,056 minus £376 equals £2,680, but I would have had to take more boats, so let's say £2,730. My other personal biggest expense was the scuba diving and free diving that I did, which is a completely preferential thing. Not everyone is going to be diving in the Philippines. It is awesome, but it is a pricey activity. I completed a PADI basic freediver course and a PADI freediver course separately because I was ill for the first time, an emergency first responder course, and my rescue diver scuba course. These 4 courses collectively cost me £675. I also did 13 fun dives across my time in the Philippines, which collectively cost me £342.40, which is around £25 per fun dive, including equipment and whatnot. So if I were to do the exact same trip with the flights but no diving whatsoever, the whole thing would have costed me £3,056 minus £675 minus £342.40, which is £2,038.60. And if I took no flights as well, £2,038.60 minus £376 is £1,662.60. But add on a bit because I'd take more boats. So basically £1,700 for 55 days, which is around £31 per day. So technically you could use this figure to figure out how much your Philippines trip is going to cost, but we're going to break it down a lot further because you can travel the Philippines for still a lot cheaper than this, but it's depending on a few factors. The first factor is which islands you are traveling to and even which destinations within these islands. Excluding flights and diving, here is a list of all the destinations that I traveled to and my average daily spending in order from cheapest to most expensive. Now these numbers are not very digestible for my brain, so I'm going to round them up and categorize them to make this all a little bit easier. Luzon, which includes Manila and Donsol, of the places that I went to, I found was the cheapest place that I traveled. £15 a day for food, accommodation and travel. I guess the only big activity I actually did here was scuba diving, which has been excluded from this cost, which is why it is a lot cheaper. But also just being in a big city, you have so many more options for food and accommodation, so it's easy to find something cheap. And Donsol is just not very touristy, so it is the kind of prices you can expect to see in the more local parts of the Philippines. Malapascua, Cebu, Bohol and Siquijor, I've put at an average of £25 per day, including food, accommodation, travel and activities, excluding flights and diving. I'd say you definitely can do this still even cheaper as well. Accommodation ranges from around 300 pesos for a basic hostel to 600 pesos for quite a nice hostel. Food ranges from 200 pesos per day if you're eating like 2 local meals, or maybe even go up to 800 pesos if you're eating 3 more Western meals. And then for travel, I was generally renting a scooter almost every day, which was around 350 pesos a day, but you could be spending spending up to 600 pesos if you're heading on tricycles, ferries, and other modes of transport. Then for activities, you could spend just 200 pesos a day on some evening beverages, or you could be spending up to 1500 pesos on something like a canyoning tour. So looking at these prices, these destinations can cost daily anything from 16 to 53 pounds per day. It really depends on your interests and how you like to travel. As you can see, my spending was kind of in the middle. I was staying at hostels that were like mid-range. They were nice, they were a little bit more than the most basic ones, but they weren't blowout either. I rented a scooter almost every day. My meals, I generally eat 2 meals a day, and it was like a combo of local and Western food depending on my mood. And I was pretty active when it came to activities. I did all the main things that were on offer, and yeah, I count alcohol as an activity as well. And yeah, I often did have a fair few bevies most evenings. Another good and cheap thing about traveling around these islands is that once you are in Cebu, you definitely don't need to catch a flight to get to any of these, so that's really going to help keep your costs down low as well. Let's look at the next tier of destinations: Camiguin, Port Barton and Siargao. I personally spent around £30 per day excluding flights. Again, you can definitely do this cheaper. I really identify as kind of a mid-range backpacker. Then working up from that, I spent an average of £35 per day in Coron. But I do think that the prices kind of bumped up in Coron specifically because of the island hopping that you can do there, which is a little bit more expensive. And the restaurants in Coron are not the cheapest unless you decide, of course, to eat completely local. But again, that's down to you, your preferences and how you like to travel. Since Coron was my final destination, I was a little bit sick of Filipino food. I was definitely not leaning towards it. Full honesty here. Sorry, Filipino people. You can take the girl out of England, but you can't take the England out of the girl. El Nido was the priciest place I went, but also was, of course, one of the most epic with all the island hopping and the zip lining and whatnot. For a basic hostel in El Nido, you're going to be paying around 600 pesos, but they also have some really nice hostels which you can treat yourself to there, which is what I did. I spent 1100 pesos per night on accommodation in El Nido. The restaurants are also much pricier, so along with food, accommodation, and activities, I was spending an average of £50 per day in El Nido. But the most expensive daily thing that I did on my trip in the Philippines was the expedition. My 3-day, 2-night expedition from El Nido to Coron cost me 14,000 pesos for everything included, which is around £210, so £70 a day. But I would say it was the best thing I did in the Philippines. I absolutely do not regret it, and I see that as money well spent. Let's go through a few 30-day scenarios, because I'd say that 30 days is probably the most common length of time for a typical backpacker, because it's the maximum amount of time that you could stay in the country without needing a special visa. Let's start cheap. You're going to the Philippines for 30 days. You want to have a fab time, but you want to spend as little money as possible. So you fly into Manila and spend 2 days there, finding your feet in the country. You fly straight down to Cebu, which is going to be your new base. 27 to 28 days to play around with down here. Let's go to Moalboal for 4 days, then spend 2 days exploring southern Cebu, head down to Siquijor for 4 days, move across to Bohol for 4 days, and then head to Camiguin for 4 days. Then we're going to get the ferry back to Bohol for another 3 days exploring elsewhere, work our way back up to Cebu to fly back up to Manila, and we're going to spend our last 3 days hiking around in the mountains that are north of Manila. You've got 2 flights here from Manila to Cebu and Cebu back to Manila. Let's say you booked them with a fairly nice amount of time in advance, so completely guessing that's going to cost you around £40 each way, so that's £80 to get from Manila to Cebu and back again. You've got 6 days in the Luzon region. You're doing this cheap. It's costing you £15 per day with a total of £90. You've got 17 days in the MCBS region, aka Malapascua, Cebu, Bohol, Siquijor, which I said cost me around £25 per day, but you're cheaper than me. You're going to stay in cheap accommodation, you're always going to eat local, and it's going to cost you £20 a day. That's £340. And then we have 4 days in Camiguin. I spent £30 in a day. You're going to be cheaper. You're going to spend £25 per day. That's £100 in Camiguin. So this 30-day itinerary in the Philippines is going to cost you £610, and that's a really nice little itinerary if you ask me. You've got some epic spots there and you're not breaking the bank. And if we're doing our maths correctly, and let's say you want to squeeze in some diving, £25 per fun dive, you're going to do a day of 2 fun dives, add on an extra 50 quid, £660. Or maybe when you're in Moalboal, you want to do a free diver course, which cost me £210. That's going to bring your price up to £820.
But Christiane, I want to go to Palawan. I've heard so much about it. I want to do the island hopping and the expedition. How much is that going to cost me?
Okay, I have an idea. Why don't you get the overnight ferry from Manila to Coron? It's cheaper than flying. It costs around £20, but it only runs certain days of the week, so you need to look into this. We're going to spend 4 days in Coron. £35 per day brings you to £140. Then we're going to do a 5-day, 4-night ultimate expedition from Coron to El Nido, which is going to cost us around £400. It's spenny, but it's going to be worth it. Now we're going to spend 5 days in El Nido having a fab time, ziplining, partying, exploring all the secluded beaches up north, and maybe some more island hopping. It's going to cost around £250. But then we're going to head to Port Barton and just chill for 5 days, eat some nice food at £30 per day. This will cost you £150 before heading to Puerto Princesa to fly back. But wait, we still have 10 days to play around with. Why don't we fly to Cebu, which is going to cost us £60 because this is a kind of last minute decision, and let's go to Moalboal for 4 days, which is going to cost us £100. And heck, why don't we spend our last 5 days in Siquijor, £125, before getting the ferry back to Cebu and flying back up to Manila for £40. This trip is going to the most expensive places, and you're not on the tightest budget ever, but also not completely splashing out, and it's going to cost you £1,285. Do you see how we can now kind of work out a logical budget for you and your needs? It would be very easy for me to tell you, yep, just budget £1,000 a month for the Philippines, but as you can see, you can do it much cheaper than this, or it may end up costing you more. The key is just to do your research. Have a look at my previous video of where to go and all of my travel vlogs, and decide which places you think you really want to go. Have a look at how much time you have and how much money you can realistically save and spend on this trip. You can obviously travel each place faster than what I have suggested, but one of the biggest regrets I hear from backpackers who have gone to the Philippines is that they rush their trip. They're leaving each destination feeling like they haven't properly discovered it. They're repacking their bags every single day, and quite frankly, they're exhausted. So please do keep this in mind when you're planning your trip. Also, this is very, very important. Please bring more than you think you're going to spend on your trip, just in case. It's a really good idea to keep a track of your spending when you're in the Philippines. I literally just did this by writing it down on the notes on my phone, because I personally didn't have a specific budget. I just wanted to track how much I was spending, mostly for the purpose of this video. But I have recently discovered an app called Spendy, which I'll definitely be using in the future. It's where you can set a budget for your trip, and it will tell you how much money you have to spend every day, and you log in all your transactions and it will tell you if you're over and under and how much you have left. And I just think that's a really good idea for keeping a track of your finances so that you don't run out of money, but also are not underspending and know when you can treat yourself. I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more Philippines tips and advice and content from around the world, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!
What do I believe? What makes me feel it? To write you this song. 2 hours a day, 5 months and a year. Oh,